and what the impact on the data analytics, and see if data analytics is even a part of some of the solutions that are being presented. So we know that there were quite a bit of furloughs and layoffs, specifically in education, and even in most industries, there has been a lot of changing in the work environment and the workforce. For example, even in Arizona, I know that all of the 4 major institutions, with GCU being exempt, all of the full-time faculty were essentially highly recommended. So basically they had to take at least a month furlough for the summer, which means just that's a month depart from the institution without paid. So anyway, so no profession was immune from the COVID-19, and in this survey, about 13% of the data and analytics professionals cited that their companies were either furloughing or laying off. And so, yeah, there were layoffs as well. Even in analytics, which is one of the most stable industries and workforces out there. The majority, slightly over 50% of the respondents were concerned about their own jobs as well. And one respondent said, I believe that the return to normal timeframe will be years. And that has been the predictor. And even to the point that most professionals are saying now that there will not be a return to normal. We will indeed have a new norm across the board. So the impact of this, and we all know this, it's been exacerbated quite a bit. And even in the past 2-3 months, which there was one predictor that said by this time that we will see more stability, but we obviously have not. So the rest of the respondents, over 40%, felt that their employers needed them to do more than ever. So, and some of the companies were actually looking for more data, data analytics, more. Let's look at more data. Let's look at what's happening. See if we could create some decision-making processes based on the amounts of data that's being analyzed. And some of these companies were actually still hiring during COVID. And that number has actually increased from what I understand. So a lot of the staffing scenarios around your industry or our industry, data analytics, is actually becoming quite prominent. And basically, the way the requests are now, the thought process is that this may be probably one of the more obviously prominent fields as we begin to understand what the new norms are. So let's see what else. Although only 20% of respondents reported that analytics and data initiatives have been canceled. So that's a small percentage. And if you go back last year about this time, there were many levels of prediction that by 2020, a lot of these initiatives would be, as far as the workforce, it would be overwhelming most of the industries. They would have been looking for individuals to fill some of the gaps, and not only for analytics, but software, hardware, et cetera. And some of them were stating that a lot of these, many of these assets were or have been frozen, but in the last 2 months, a lot of these assets, initiatives have begun to move again. So it does appear that most companies are absorbing the impact and beginning to think, well, how can we give back to some of these initiatives to make sure that, whether it's economic recovery or just the impact on individual behavior, et cetera, et cetera. So all of these are going to be a part of what data analytics will move to as far as during the pandemic and post-pandemic. So as we all know, the nature of work is changing. This is not even a predictor anymore. It is pretty much a default. So as a part of this survey, they asked respondents what kind of work were they doing. And remember, these are data analytics professionals. Over half of the respondents said that they're being asked to answer new kinds of questions based on the economic impact. And I just mentioned that. And that's a big deal, as you all know. those of you in finance probably know this much better than I do. The economic impacts across the board globally, although it's probably managed a little bit better in my prediction, in other areas, other cultures in the U.S. But we can just quote what's happening right here in the metro area, because we opened up sooner than what was predicted, and obviously now we're dealing with new economic issues, and this residual will probably last us a while. They're saying second, third quarter of 2021 before we can even think about recovering. All right, so about a third of respondents said they need to update their models and other analytics to deal with changing customer behaviors. And as I said, right now, everyone's trying to figure out, well, what do we do now? And what do we do next? And how is this going to impact what data will be evaluated and analyzed? And those are the pending questions in the analytics world as we look at things like behavior, as we look at things like trends and predictions. So all of this will produce different questions. It may not cause any different approaches, but it'll definitely produce different questions. So in addition to new questions, about a third of the respondents said that they were being asked to bring new data sources into the organization for analytics, as well as new attributes and features for this analysis. So they were also being asked to run analytics more frequently. That's a big thing now. There's pretty much a charge to have data results ready. So they're running more and more reports, different types of reports, et cetera. So essentially, analysts are being asked to do more. They're being asked to understand more types of reporting structures. They're being asked to understand more types of data points, et cetera. So it's fortunate, I think, that this trend, as far as data analytics, that will continue, because there will be a demand for answers to questions that cannot be answered by prediction models, but need data. And we all know that data is going to be the driving factor as far as all of these changes that are upcoming, which I think will ensure that if you want to continue in the analytics realm, especially if you want to go the managerial route, and just database modeling, SQL, the different platforms. The sky will be the limit. You can probably go into a data scientist role at a major corp and essentially run these initiatives. And that would be my dream scenario. So what is happening? So yes, we all know that working from home is just definitely the standard now. And in the future, the prediction is that working from home will be, or the workforce will consist of a hybrid model, where as much as 50% of the employees will be asked to work from home. And some of these superstructures, as far as offices, will diminish as far as capacity, and I think that will help the economy as well, depending on how we look at it. And I will ask you all for your opinion on that if you have one. But working at home is harder for some. Some individuals can't deal with what needs to happen at home. Some individuals will work 10 to 12 hours a day because they can do everything else while they're working. And no one's micromanaging their approaches, their tactics, or whatever. But let's see, about 40% said that working at home or from home had no impact. And it's been proven just in other surveys that when we were all quarantined mid-March for the first month and a half or so, productivity as far as the workforce, especially in data analytics, went up. One, because the technology was in place right away. It was baseline to support some of these processes being run from your laptop, sitting in your home, on your home network, or workers were asked to use VPN or protected connections to connect to their office servers or whatever. but we all know that this may create an issue, and this will be another data point as far as analytics. Um, and briefly, I'll just touch on this slide. Also talks about collaboration while we're being quarantined, while we're at home, while we're doing the stay at home, stay safe. And this was another aspect of what's happening during these trying times. Collaboration has also gone up. Only a small percent had issues as far as technology, which were easily resolved because technology has been the one workforce that has been, tasked to do so much more now. And the thing of it is, a lot of these platforms and levels of functionality they were in their beginning stages anyway. So all they did was just accelerate some of these initiatives on that side. So ultimately, in a nutshell, the one thing that we have in place now, I mean, even though the pandemic was not predicted, but from a technological perspective, we were pretty much ready to make the accelerated change to support some of these just, remote initiatives that are in place, including education, for the most part. All right, so what does this lead to? The one thing that was determined through her report is that there is a high need now for analytics. Analytics is probably the most thing that's important now because we need to analyze everything. We need to analyze the impact. We need to analyze behaviors. We need to analyze what happens when we start to establish the new norms. This is all data that's ready to be analyzed, and they're going to ask people like yourselves to begin to do that, to begin to think about that, to begin to learn the tools to do that, et cetera, et cetera. So, and the one thing that's being mentioned quite a bit, and in the last paragraph, and this is something that you probably will learn a little bit in this program, but not a whole lot. That's AI. It's another part of the analytics, the analytics process where you both have essentially a machine level of a prediction, and then that will be combined with the human analytics and investigation to come up with a, kind of a wholesale answer. I know this is big even in healthcare as they deal with some of the data that's being evaluated as far as patients and this is also being used as far as the development of vaccines, et cetera, et cetera. So all this, and as you know, and what I'm going to try and impress upon you as we finish the next couple of weeks of the course, I mean, you are in a very important field as far as what you're learning and what you would like to do post-learning. And it is becoming more and more important, and it's becoming even more extremely important as we deal with and look to what the post-pandemic will become for us. So essentially, as I stated, I'll gloss over this. One of the things that she has stated that we'll face in the future: change, adaptability, and then along with the change and adaptability, the loop back is going to be analytics. How are we going to analyze this? How are we going to use this to feed back to purposes and proposals and initiatives that will continue to help us evolve? And I'll kind of finish this with, she finished it with a quote from JFK that basically says, change is the law of life. Those who look only to the past or present are certain to miss the future. And that was one of his more favorite quotes, because we do have to always look past what's even happening now to ensure that we understand what the future is. And just a little bit about her. She's very, very well known in the analytics community. She spent 20 years in data and IT, kind of like me. And she's done a lot. She wrote several of the For Dummies books on computing and data. So if you want to read something or even communicate with her, she's at Texas A&M. She loves, I would definitely, and you can find her on LinkedIn, and she's more than willing to speak to anyone about data analytics, the future. And I think she's being inundated now. I tried to talk to her this week, and she says I'll probably have to schedule you for a couple weeks. And yeah. But anyway, any comments about data analytics and the impact of COVID from you all? Feel free to speak up, or text, type in the chat or whatever. But
I think commercial real estate will be heavily impacted.
Yes.
They're already extremely delinquent, and it's nearing, actually it's going to be worse than 2008 levels. Actually, it peaked at 2012, but commercial real estate, especially in office buildings,
right,
that industry is going to be hit heavily. And I think there's going to be tons of opportunities coming up in the next 3 to 5 years, because there's going to be so many foreclosures, and that will impact the value of commercial real estate as well.
I definitely agree. What do you think we'll do about commercial real estate is going to be, I mean, obviously tremendously impacted. So what do you think the solutions will be, just in general?
Well, one, companies are going to like this, because they're going to be like, well, why should I pay X amount of dollars for overhead for this employee to rent this space if I can just pay them for VPN and give them a laptop, they can work from home. It's going to be cheaper in the long run. And also some of these other jobs, is going to be easier excuse for some of the other jobs to be just gone. Because 60%, according to some of the researchers, out of all these jobs that got laid off, right, 60% of them will return. Most likely 40% will never be there. Right. It's just going to be gone. So again, there is opportunity everywhere. I think in this commercial real estate, some of these buildings might be converted from commercial, office building into residential.
Right, right. So the opportunities, yeah.
There's the opportunity. And a perfect example, I mean, we all live here locally. Perfect example of that is Central and Camelback. Southeast corner. There used to be M&I Bank or BMO Harris Bank, and now, and other few law firms. Now it's completely being turned into a residential high-rise. So we're probably going to see a lot of that coming up.
All right, there you go. Well, thanks, Branislav.
My pleasure.
All right, so now I'd like to depart a little bit, and I'm just going to run a little bit of a poll. To access the poll, just type in your browser poev.com/DwightFerris537, and this will take you to the poll. And I'm going to go ahead and stop the share here. And we're just going to answer 5 questions. It's just to kind of get us out of the, and let's see. I want to share here. So let me know when you're all on.
Professor, can you share the link again? What is that?
Okay, sorry. All right, it's poev.com/DwightFerris537.
It's in a chat room. In a chat box too. I messaged it.
And Branislav was great. He just typed it in the chat.
Okay, thank you.
All right. All right. So if we're all ready, I will go ahead and launch the questions. And are we ready? Yes, no?
Yes, Professor.
I think so.
Yes.
Yeah.
It just, you can either use your name or go anonymous. It's not a big deal. And then it should sit, you should reach a screen that says waiting for presentation to begin. All right. So our first question, or more of a response, is this. In 1 or 2 words, describe, we're going to do a word cloud, your in-home experience during COVID-19. So how can you describe your experience? And you can enter as many entries as you like, and then we're going to see what the responses are as they begin to develop in the word cloud. So we have things like family, work, time, enjoyable, lonely, yes. And I'll show the word cloud once. All right. Time, family, work. Stir crazy, frustrating, pleasant.
Stir crazy is definitely a good word. I'm putting that one because definitely agree with that.
All right. All right, I'll give it a few more seconds. Seems like family, work, and time. And stir crazy is becoming more prominent. Unproductive. I haven't seen that. Okay. So let's see if I can show responses. All right. I have a change polars. We do have 26. It's not showing the responses. Hold on. Let's see. Hmm. All right. So I'll show the responses. Hmm. All right, I'm trying to figure out how to show. Oh, this is not helping. Well, I need to figure out how to show the word cloud. This show responses button doesn't work, but the winners in here, the family, work time, stir crazy, unproductive, and then a host of other lonely, office, home office, growth, efficient, pleasant. So these are mostly positive. That's good. I wish I could show this, but so you don't see the responses, do you?
No, Professor, we can't see. Yeah.
You can see
No.
it, you're not seeing it.
No,
Yeah, I have show responses and I stop.
I see just mine.
Yeah. Yeah. I wonder if they've changed that. All right. Well, I'll figure that out for next time. So, all right. So let's go on to the next one. And this is kind of a check to see if you're paying attention. How many responses did the GWI team receive from their survey? And this one does have a correct answer. And it looks like most everyone is paying attention. I don't know why the responses don't show. I don't know if you have to log in. Oh, I see. All right, and the correct answer, according to the article was 200. 200 responses. I think most of you got it right.
It didn't accept mine. I don't know why.
Yeah.
It did not?
Oh.
I must have been fooling around. You can try it again.
I clicked on it a couple of times, but okay, never mind.
Right there, took it. Yeah.
Yeah, I was trying to see if I can show the, I guess what I can do, let me go back to that word cloud and I'll share my screen for that before we go on so that you can see. What the word cloud looks like. Duh, I forgot that I can do that. All right. So that's what the word cloud looks like from that last question. Pretty interesting.
That crazy is pretty big.
There's a lot of terms in there, but work time, stir crazy family seem to be the most prominent. So
does it make the word bigger based on the entries? Like a lot of people put time and work
yes,
in there. Okay.
yes.
So surprising, some people put pleasant.
Yeah, the larger words are the ones that are most commonly entered.
I think it was really good in the beginning because it was a good change, but now it is monotonous. Every day it's the same thing that.
Yeah.
Yes.
All those
It
days blend in. I don't know if I'm at work or I'm at home.
Yeah.
And you lose track of days and time and yeah, it's pretty interesting. All right. Thank you. All right. So let's go on to our next question. Okay. So Another question to see if you're paying attention. Because of COVID-19, the majority of organizations are not moving forward with planned database initiatives. True or false? What do you think? True or false? Well, we have some indecisiveness here. All right, I'll give you 10 seconds to enter your answer, and then I'll have to show you. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, clock. All right. So what, is that true or false?
That's true. They are not going forward. I mean, the majority is not going forward. I think 20% are going forward.
Well, the article said that the majority of organizations were moving forward.
Yeah.
With the initiative. So that's actually false.
It's actually.
I thought it said 20%, so that means like those are moving forward, so rest becomes the majority.
Yes, it's a little bit of play on words, but the article did say that, or I rambled on about, yes, the impact is high, but the majority of organizations are hunkering down, accepting the change, and planning to move forward with their database initiatives. So I guess I got 3 people. All right. All right, couple more. Let's see. Hold on. So working at home and or remote learning is difficult for you, yes or no? Well, this is more of a, to see how you respond. Oh, look at this. It's interesting responses. So working at home or I know a lot of you are still working at home and learning. So I'm going to go ahead and lock this and show you. And this follows the trends, the national trends, what people generally feel about working at home. So as you see, it's about 50-50. So more people said no, but quite a few, 48% said yes. So why, let me ask you, those that said yes, why is it difficult? I know that we saw some of the terms and phrases in the word cloud. Why is it difficult? Is it just because it's mundane? You have no idea.
It's mainly due to, family, kids, coming in the middle of the meetings and asking for some help. At the same time, there is no planned, earlier, like when I used to go to office, it's more of like 8:30 to 4:35, 5:30 kind of a work. Now, meetings gone crazy. They're even setting up a meeting at 5:30, some meetings even at 6, 7:30, 8. I mean, the evening, okay, it's going very crazy now.
Yes, it's quite a bit different, but remember, believe it or not, this is going to be what we'll have to deal with for a while. So there's going to be some adjustments that need to be made. Fortunately.
So at least like even my organization as well, at least like every month period, they're taking a feedback from everybody. There is a survey is going on to get to know the individual, observations, what they feel, how they feel, something. It's going on.
Oh, absolutely. So it's interesting, all the things that are happening now around this work at home, these work at home conditions. and how this is becoming in so many industries. Well, we need to figure out exactly how to continue this, even after the pandemic, even after we have a vaccine, et cetera, et cetera. So we'll see what happens. I think it's going to be very interesting how it all pans out. All right, one last word cloud and we'll be done. So what are you planning to do when you finish your degree? It's more curiosity for me. I do want to get an idea. Work, stay-at-home mom still, or stay-at-home dad. What are you planning to do with your degree? Oh, PhD. There you go. Pursue a raise. Yep. So just enter anything, and we'll see the responses. We'll see if there's any commonality. And I'll let you all work on this a little bit before I share the screen. Transition, work, PhD, scientist. Advancements, yeah. Opportunities. All right, I'm going to keep that open and go ahead and show you the word cloud that we're building. So it looks like you're all going to stick with analytics, work, and there's well, PhD. How many of you are planning on pursuing your doctorate?
Myself, Professor.
Okay.
I am. Yeah, me too.
All right, so that's actually a good idea. Even if you want to be a researcher or a scientist, basically if you get your PhD in analytics or whatever direction you want to go, entrepreneur, move, that means move out of the valley. Let's see. Obsessed.
Already in Bay Area.
Okay, analyst, transition. I know a few of you are transitioning from a different industry into what's going to involve most industries. Go move. All right. Thank you. That was interesting. I appreciate your participation. We'll probably do that a couple more times just to break up the monotony a little bit. All right. So let's go back to our lecture. Okay. All right, so I wanted to just talk briefly about writing styles, my expectation. I sent you all essentially my graded examples illustrating, what I'm expecting in writing in general. So please read through those, scan them, whatever. Generally APA, but it's not required. But the big thing that I'm expecting as far as writing is clarity and succinctness. That doesn't mean that one or two sentences will satisfy the response to the topic. I just mean if you're clear about your own version of the response in your writing, then that's fine. Yes, grammar and spelling and all that is important, but mostly I look for clear and concise writing, because that was beaten to my head while I was writing and writing and writing. So I unfortunately have to pass that on to you all. So that being said, I've asked one of your classmates to showcase their writing. So if they're in agreement, I would like for them to share their screen and just highlight some of the things that they, because it was basically, and I will tell you now, it's very hard to impress me with writing. I'm very meticulous about writing style. So, and throughout all the classes, I've had very few students that impressed me with their writing, and this particular student did. So, if they don't mind, the floor is theirs, and if not, we'll just go on. I don't want to put them on the spot unless they want to. So no response. So
Professor, I can show.
okay, it's up to you. So go ahead, please.
Sure.
So are you going to share your screen or?
Yes, Professor.
Okay. I'm not trying to put pressure on you, just asking.
No, I have joined through iPad, so I couldn't able to share my Word document.
Okay, got it. Okay.
Otherwise, you can show the document. I can walk through.
You want me to share it?
Yes, the document.
Okay. Give me a second. All right, here we go. All right, can you all see the document?
Yes, Professor.
Yes, Professor.
Yeah.
Professor, do you want me to walk through the writing style?
Okay. Okay, I'll go ahead and walk through what I'm expecting and what I liked or disliked about this. Obviously, I do want you to provide your name and the date and the course title at the very least, either via title page or title header. And generally, if you copy down the questions, in this scenario, yes, we're asking you to write so many words per question, but it's probably good just to copy down the question so I can reference back and know that you're answering. And the way that he is writing, typical master level writing, for example, his first sentence highlights essentially the topic of the little portion of the essay. In general terms, a tuple is a data structure that contains a definite number of sequence of elements. That part of your writing should be evident. That first sentence should describe exactly what you're talking about. And you should never stray from that topic as you go into the rest of your explanation. And then you should have some type of conclusive remark without understanding tuple data structure, the interpretation of rows and columns in a table that constitutes a relational database is complex. That's his observation of the topic, and everything in between those two sentences, either expands upon or explains that topic, which is answering this question, define a tuple, and how and where does a tuple fit into relational database theory. Now, this is the question, and a lot of you defined a tuple and then you strayed from the context of the question. So that's what I'm looking for there. So, and yes, he has a few marks in here, and this is just just generally, what I see as far as instead of represents, and those are minor. And I would recommend if you don't have Grammarly or some of the other writing tools, even in Word, where you can use the Word writing tool and Grammarly, and it will help you with some of these grammar, these little minor grammar things. And I don't really take off a lot for that. And just to let you know, whenever I highlight something in green, it just means that it's a recommendation. It's not like something to mark off. So that ultimately, the reason why I liked what Shahari did. I mean, he did that for every one of his little segments. He answered the question, because there is a question in here, and then he expanded upon it, and then he offered his opinion, and then he substantiated it or validated it with the resources. And these resources I do know, and I usually go back and check those just to make sure. And so he basically did that for every single one of the questions. The biggest question that I had a lot of issues with most of you is number 6, the ERD. Well, actually, the second one that was the biggest issue was the relation and class. Number 3, what's the difference between a relation in an RDBMS and a class in an OODBMS? And are they interchangeable? And if so, explain how. So I would want you to answer all of that in your statement. And I'm not going to read through his, but he did the best job of answering that. He talked about what the two aspects are and how they compare to their database modeling systems. And then if they're interchangeable, he explains how. Specifically interchangeably, they are not interchangeably because of the definitions of what class and relationship can store. I mean, that's pretty straightforward, very clear, and that's definitely a correct way to interpret those. They're really not interchangeable. Classes and relations, even if you reference them as this is connected to this model and this is interpreted under this model, they're truly not interchangeable. So I did like that. And then the last one was ERD. And reading through this from an entity relationship diagram and ERD standpoint, would there be a significant difference? Would there be a significant difference between using an ORDBMS versus an RDBMS? Explain why or why not, and discuss specific instances in which differences are the deciding factor. Well, from the very start, you know that the ORDBMS is just a hybrid of the OODBMS and RDBMS. So, and we'll talk about this a little bit more in this section if we get a chance. I mean, you can essentially structure an ERD for an ORDBMS, and a lot of you stated that you cannot, and even some of you stated that the only way to structure an ORDBMS is through an UML, which is correct, but it's not the only way. And I don't really talk about, I was not really asking about UML in here. I was just asking about from the ERD's perspective. So he stayed on topic there, talked about the differences between the models, talked about how basically you can map how it's a hybrid, and then essentially answered the question. So the reason why I wanted to showcase his work, because of that approach to answering the questions. I mean, he was very clear about his responses, and it was easy to read and connect that to the question itself. So I would like to open this up for comments or questions just based on that, if you like, since you've all received your graded version and with my notes or whatever. Are there any questions, comments?
Yeah, Professor, the only question is actually when I had earlier put up the questions there and then the responses, but the similarity index goes very high because if everyone it's already there in the GCU database. Right. So it was showing me 26% similar to something else.
Right.
Yes, same here. So
that makes sense, but I mean, the purpose of the assignment is expand upon that so that you're explaining it explaining to me in a way that I know that you understand, rather than, so it's a writing assignment for that purpose. And so and it doesn't mean that you have to write a lot per se, but just explain to me even if it's just your version. And I for some of you, you're taking some of your research and quoting material, but I did not see your particular version or synthesis of that material. So my believability of your understanding it's not quite there. I'm like, well, I'm not sure if you really understand, or you just read through a quote and it seemed appropriate. So any other questions or comments?
Professor, I kind of struggled when answering these questions because I didn't know if you wanted to know my opinions or it's just the right answers. So
okay,
that's why I didn't go into details for me.
okay.
Yes.
Okay, Sylvia, thank you for addressing that. I want your graduate students, so I want to know your opinions. And your opinions from a graduate level should be substantiated or validated by your research. That's kind of the whole purpose. But I do want your perspective, your opinion, your interpretation, all of that should be included in your responses. I don't necessarily want you to find the material and quote it and then say that's the answer, because I'm not looking for a right answer. None of these are looking for a right answer. Just looking for your perspective because that represents your learning. So I know that a lot of you want to give the right answer. I am not a proponent of when you're writing to create a conclusion that's right. Does that make sense?
Yes, Professor.
Okay. All right. Okay. So let's move on beyond that. You do have another writing assignment coming up. Just keep in mind what my expectations are, and you'll do fine. All right. Okay. All right, let's move on in our lecture. All right, now and if this video works, hopefully, well, the premise of this video, essentially it talks about object-oriented databases, and this whole video presentation was created by an object relational database using Python and data points for all of the speaking language, the movement, everything was a combination of data points and Python, the Python program. So I hope this will work. That's right. I did have problems with the audio on this system. Let me finagle it a little bit.
Spent weeks researching this and I am no closer to something that explains object-oriented databases in a simple-to-understand format.
What is going on in here? This place is a pigsty.
I have been researching object-oriented databases.
Can you guys hear it?
Yes, Professor.
Yes.
Yeah, a little distorted. Yeah.
A little distorted, but you can hear? Okay, hold on. All right.
They make no sense to me, but I have a presentation due tomorrow.
Tomorrow? And you're just now saying something about it? With less than 24 hours left to finish your research? Are you mentally insane? Ludicrous. How can you possibly finish in time? You need an expert on object-oriented databases to explain in detail. Lucky for you, I am just that expert.
Toot, toot, toot. Someone's tooting their own horn.
Sit down, be quiet, and pay attention. I'll have you up to speed in no time.
Yes, Your Highness. Should I be taking notes?
Yes, you should. After all, I was taught by the world-renowned Dr. David McDonald, so I know everything there is to know about object-oriented databases. Are you ready?
Yes, I can barely sit still. I'm so filled with excitement.
Okay, here we go. Do not interrupt me. OODBS supports the modeling and creation of data as objects. It must have inheritance, polymorphism, and encapsulation, characteristics that enable the storage and retrieval of complex data types.
Whoa, stop. My brain is about to explode. You're not clarifying the subject matter at all.
Didn't I say don't interrupt me? Geez, how can I dummy it down for you? Okay, then. How about comparing it to relational models, which you already know? Even a 5th grader could get it then. If that does not work, you will just have to remain clueless, and unless you seduce your professor, you will fail.
By all means. If you think that will work, please proceed.
One of the biggest differences between relational databases and OODBSs is that OODBSs handle more complex data types.
What do you mean by complex?
Well, relational databases store simple data such as employee's name, date of birth, hire date, etc. OODBSs can store hypermedia such as graphics, videos, CAD, and even geographical satellite information.
Wow, that's pretty nifty. But wait, in a relational database, even multivalued attributes have to be split into separate tables.
You're so simple-minded. You're wondering how that complex data is stored. It's kind of like parking a car in a garage. The garage is the database. With OODBSs, you can drive the entire car into the garage, shut off the engine, and leave it untouched, ready to be driven the next time you need it. In a relational database, you would have to break the car down into individual parts, store them on different shelves, and then put it back together the next time. No, joyriding. One can only hope you know what you're doing when you dis and reassemble the car.
Oh, that makes sense. I believe I am beginning to see the light now. The comparison with relational systems was beneficial.
Thank God.
Do you have any more examples you can give me?
Of course I do. Let's continue with the car example. What happens the next time you need to use your car? For the disassembled car, you would need a mechanic to put it back together, someone who spoke the correct language so that the car operated as intended when reassembled. For the car you parked in the garage, you would only need to communicate that you wanted it to start by inserting and turning the key. No special language needed. Of storing data like that is that you can access it at a more granular level without affecting other objects. In a relational model, you would have to potentially lock the entire table just to update one tuple. In OODBMSs, you access things at the object level. Another advantage is that you can cache objects on local machines, taking advantage of the faster processing power of the local client in comparison to the network. There's no way you can do that with a table. That would be disastrous. Are you starting to get it now?
I do. You are an amazing instructor. You have a way of making a complicated topic understandable.
Well. Who is tooting my horn now?
Your horn is quite lovely. I'd love to toot it some more after this project is done. But for now, I think I am ready for a more thorough treatment of the topic.
Finally, your brain is grasping the essentials. I must admit, it's refreshing to know that I'm still this good. Dr. McDonald would be quite proud of me.
Would you be able to point me to additional material that could advance my understanding even further in a short period of time? Perhaps you have published some material yourself that I could consult?
Nope, not me. But a group in my class called The Last Man Standing have prepared a wiki page. I will give you the link and you can read it.
Excellent. I'll have this in the bag in no time. Want to go dancing with me tomorrow night?
Oh, good grief. Don't be overconfident. There's still much you need to learn.
Don't worry, babe. I have this. especially now that I know the most significant characteristic is that OODBSs combine object-oriented programming with database technology to provide an integrated application development system.
If you say so. Good luck tomorrow. Remember to visit the Last Man Standing wiki page.
All right. See, can you all hear me still?
Yes, Professor.
All right.
Yes.
Great. So the interesting thing about that, that video was actually made like 6, 7 years ago. So it's still pretty amazing, kind of the content of it. And then the topic is useful as well. Maybe I should show that before we start going further into OODBMSs or ORDBMS. All right, so yes, here we are at topic 6 of 8. The topic is basically ORDBMS's implementation and development techniques. So our objectives are to articulate the fundamental attributes of an object relational database management system, ORDBMS. Yeah, you get tired of saying all these DBMSs. Coding, explain complex data as it pertains to relational databases. And that is important, and it's becoming more and more important. Discuss advanced features and benefits of ORDBMS. All right, so the first DQ for this week, of the 2 object-capable data programming methods, what attributes of the object relational design make it the more preferred method? Provide your rationale with support from literature, and there's a couple of, at least one article that goes into ORDBMSs fairly well. ORDBMSs are starting to make, or they were starting to make a comeback here because of the skill sets for the programming languages and there's not more individuals that understand languages like Java and Python, but Python is leveling the playing field a little bit because it's an easier object-oriented language to learn. So it's becoming more prominent from these application development that the ORDBMS is the best way to go because you don't have to change the RDBMS. Those relational models that are out there are still pretty prominent, and you can still have your high-end application developers and program developers still put together their application structures. The whole idea of impedance mismatching or impedance mismatch is starting to dwindle some. However, because of the need for data analytics, which is an important part of it, you'll discover that the database modeling systems are becoming quite unique across the industry. So you should be able to find, and I know you will be able to find relevant material out there on ORDBMSs. Well, it should be more prominent now. A couple of years ago, it was mostly hidden, but even during COVID, there's a lot of movement in certain industries to develop these hybrid RDBMSs, which anything like that you discovered that's even, there's even some proprietary languages that can be listed as an ORDBMS. So, all right. Oh, did I forget a DQ? Where's our next DQ? I think I forgot a DQ. We do have 2 DQs, right? Oh, here it is. It's just
We're okay with 1.
No, we have 2, sorry. All right, DQ2. Some consider Microsoft SQL Server to be an ORDBMS. Due to recently implemented features, it provides, but most consider it an RDBMS. Actually, it is an ORDBMS since release 8, which is quite a while ago. Or not, what am I saying? since 2013. Oracle once touted itself as an ORDBMS in release 8. Yes, but now Oracle's up to release 17. So these DQs are a little bit outdated. I can tell you right now, both Oracle and SQL servers, both Oracle and SQL Server are indeed ORDBMS S's. And if you look into the structure themselves, you can validate that. Because, for example, SQL Server now is integrated completely with Visual Studio, which means that you can develop VB programs and embed your database right into your VB pro. So the integration is now there, which makes it more of an ORDBMS than it was before. So getting to the DQ, what programs are actually considered object-based? You can use that example as long as you research how 2019 is completely integrated with Visual Studio under Visual Studio 2019, et cetera, et cetera. So pick a specific program and explain both its functionality and advantages to a business. And this, ignoring the versions that are being referenced, especially Oracle. The Oracle version now also includes MySQL, PHP, Python, Java, C, all of that, and the actual PL SQL language in their platform. So I've just given you two that you can research and talk about those two as far as ORDBMS platforms. And that would be valid for DQ2. Questions about that?
It's clear.
Oh, go ahead, Kaja.
It's clear, I'm just saying, at least for me.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, on to the assignments. Yes, it's another crazy writing scenario. Yeah. I love writing. How about you all? No. Okay. Using the textbook topic readings and appropriate resources on the web, compose there may be some confusion. The 100 and 250 word response is per question or per item. That's the way it's supposed to be allocated. So you have 4, I think, in this section. So each of these questions or statements require a 100 to 250 word response. That's how that's going to work with resources in it. You all did a good job with the resources. I didn't have a problem with that. So you can have a one reference page, or you can have resources under each of the questions or statements. All right. So number 1, describe simple and complex data types, provide examples of each and their typical uses in a business environment. This should be pretty straightforward. As a matter of fact, the video talked about a couple, and you can find them quite easily on the web. And in the resources, it talks about complex data types. All right, number 2, what is an impedance mismatch, and why is it important in analytics? And it is very important. What measures can a business institute to address this problem, and what barriers might exist for a business to do so? And I'll just preface this by explaining my one-time position. I was a liaison between the database administrator and back then it wasn't really analytics. It was just business processes, because for some reason we decided to do decision-making without using data, which is why we're all so stupid from back then. But one of the biggest problems was that both the application developers and the database administrator were hardcore programmers back in those days, C and Java, and the business process folks had no idea. So they would say something and interpretations would get lost and translations would get dropped. And so that is a big part, or one of the big parts of the impedance mismatch, but that's not the only thing. There's other aspects of it as well. So. All right, number 3, so you only have 3, so it's not as bad. as before, the 6 from last week. Explain an array and its pros and cons. Why might this structure be preferred for storing referencing data? It seems kind of out of place, but it's not when we talk about object relational models and objects. Arrays are, so if you understand what an array is, as a matter of fact, if you can grasp the concept of an array, you grasp one of the rudimentary parts of object-oriented environment. It's all, stack technologies and all that is based on, cells and positioning and all that. So that's why we placed that here. And you'll find there's a lot of good resources on the web talking about arrays and data and how they are used for efficient and effective data movement. So once again, APA style, yes, you don't need to write an abstract. It uses a rubric, and that's a good thing. Please, if you're not using the rubric to frame your responses, please do, because I use the rubrics, and I use all aspects of the rubrics generally. And I haven't seen any reason not to address it this way. I don't normally. I start at the top, and basically I start going down from those cells, but I know a lot of my colleagues will start at the bottom, and then you have to work your way up to the top. But I don't know, hopefully that makes sense. And yes, please submit these to Lopes Right for similarity checks. I do have to make a note of that if it is high. And generally for grad students, if it's higher than 15%, it can be an issue, but I know, and there's a caveat to that. Obviously, if you type the questions or the statements into your response, it's going to be high because it tracks that as similarity, which is ridiculous. But so don't worry if it returns high and you've typed in the questions, because that's pretty much the reason. All right, any questions about the assignment or DQs?
I do.
Yes, go ahead.
So once we answer these questions, and we are referencing our work, do you, at the end, obviously we're going to be researching and doing our own research, and on the bottom of the page is going to be references, but for citation, do you want us to put citation at the end of each question or depends, it could be 1 or 2 or 3, depends on research. Yeah. Do you still want that in the end, or?
Yes, you can do it that way. Generally, as I stated before, you're going to perform research, so to validate your own assumptions. Typical.
Okay. All right.
So if you need to cite a source, hopefully, then you remember, you know how to cite a source, and then obviously that can be added as a reference. And I said either after the question or statement itself, or at the bottom, or the page, a reference page. Both of those are appropriate.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right. So I do have a few in-class exercises that I'd like for you to work on for the rest of the time we're together. And the premise is this: your project manager is going wild about dates and times. And this is AdventureWorks. We're back in AdventureWorks. We're back to our DBMS, and your project manager has several questions that he would like you to answer with queries. Okay, the first request or question, write a query that calculates the number of days between the date an order was placed and the date it was shipped using the sales order header table, sales.sales order header table. Include the sales order ID, the order date, and the ship date. So essentially, you'll have, in this case, 4 columns. I know there's 3 listed here, but the request is to calculate the number of days between the date the order was placed and the date it was shipped. So you'll have sales order ID, order date, ship date, and then number of days, number of days, or something like that. Whatever you like to label that aggregate column. And these exercises have already been uploaded to the question to instructor forum. So please download it from there. The second, write a query that displays only the date, not the time, for the order date and ship date in the sales order header table. So basically, you want to use a function to just display the date. And that should be pretty easy. If most of you went through that aggregate function okay, so this is just a review of that. So you just want to have the date, you want to label that column just date, and it's going to be based on the order date column in the sales order header table. Number 3, write a query that adds 6 months to each order date in the sales order header table. So you want sales order ID, order date, and then 6 months. 6 months plus or 6 months added, whichever you want to label it. You want just those 3 fields in this result table. And then finally, write a query that displays the year of each order date and the numeric month for each order date in separate columns. So we want separate columns. We want one column that has a year and one column that has the separate as the numeric month. So sales order ID, order date, and then year, and then month. So essentially you'll have 4 columns in this result table. And that's it. So those are our in-class exercise. I will allow you to take a break, a 15-minute break, and then 15 to 20-minute break, and we'll get started on those afterwards. Any questions?
On the, I do have a question. This is Fernando. On the 3rd and 4th questions, so I know like on the second question, we're just doing like the actual date, taking the time, right? The time off. Am I thinking? So on the 3rd and 4th, do you want to keep that same? Because once you add that's like, say they add the 6 months, that time's still going to come into the new timestamp. So how do you want to see it, I guess is my question.
Oh, the display, well, so I'm not going to answer that question directly. I'm going to ask you, how would you want to display that if it was an actual report to your product manager?
Okay.
So obviously there's some things that you want to do to that display to make sure it's easily readable. So I'll just respond that way. Hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah, Professor, I submitted the results.
Does that make sense?
Yeah,
okay.
I submitted the results, Professor. That's what I'm saying.
You already submitted? Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
Thank you. You must start on it before we even start the lecture. Or
I got 1 hour break in between.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Yes, I usually will post the in-class exercises before. I try to get them up a few hours before. So if you do want to start on them, that's fine with me. As long as you post them into the QTI, the question to instructor, then you're good for your participation for the week, or at least half of it. All right. So take a quick break and then we'll go into solving these or satisfying the requests from our product manager. All right. Let's see, quick attendance. Who's not here? Sylvia's here. Sheik showed up. I think everyone's here. We stopped the recording.